Yep.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sutton Planning Board meeting, July 7th, 2025. We will begin with a reading of the COVID meeting statement. And Bill?
Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 28, 2025 order extending the temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law until June 30th, 2027, the meeting of the planning board is in hybrid format and is being recorded. All meeting recordings will be made available after proceedings on the town's website and YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you, Bill. We're going to begin with a roll call.
Bob Lodges, present.
Thank you, Bob. Roll call has just begun.
Up here.
Thank you, Scott. Mike Egan here,
Bill Talcott here.
Wesley Stanhope, present.
and Erica, alternate, is not at the meeting tonight. So we have no public hearings tonight, so we're going to be moving on to our action items. The first one is a site plan waiver for 176 Worcester Providence Turnpike, new business Pioneer Arms.
Come on up, gentlemen, introduce yourselves, and then just tell the board a little bit about your business and what you want to do.
Hi, my name is Nathan Lamro. I own Pioneer Arms LLC in Whitensville, Massachusetts. We are a firearms retailer and manufacturer. We would like to relocate to Sutton to have a better spot for business.
So, location, hours of operation, employees, those kind of things.
Location would be on the first floor of the building. Our hours would be just general business. We currently operate 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock in our current location. Most of my employees have day jobs. I have about 6 part-time employees. At this new spot, we would like to expand hours, if possible, depending on my schedule, my employee's schedule.
How many employees?
6 part-time. Nobody's there full-time, so.
Okay, and the first floor you're talking about is 176 Worcester Providence Turnpike. So when you are coming down Route 146 South and you go through the light, Sutton Plaza is on your right, and then there's the little street that goes to the highway barn, and then it's the very next building, the 3-story tall building. I think you said the only 2 tenants right now would be you and the autism?
There's more than 2 on that floor. There's the autism therapy place. There's a massage parlor.
Relaxology.
Steve,
Yep.
Yeah, I'm the
Sorry,
owner of the building.
This is Steve. He's the landlord of the building.
Hi, Steve, come on up.
Okay.
Steve, if you don't mind, Steve, just your address and your full name, please. For the
Steve Shabbat, 18 Tuttle Road, Sutton.
Thank you.
Steve's one of the co-owners. So just go through your tenants.
So we got autism, relaxology, care, Elderwood is upstairs. We have a therapist in the back, and that's pretty much it.
So I think we calculated your parking requirements based on the fact that in total, you have about 10,000 square feet of office space that you're leasing. And then we calculated it on one of the most conservative square foot per square foot. And that results in the amount of parking he has present on the site and is currently lined on the site. So the 4 tenants you just talked about and this tenant, the 5 of them still don't add up to 10,000 square feet, do they?
No. And so there's like 60-plus parking spaces here lined right now. And it's never, maybe a quarter full at any given time during the day.
Right. So, you'll recall this business is taking the place of Founding Fathers
Yeah, we have-
Gun Shop.
Somewhat different unit, same floor.
Yeah. But so that gun shop left, this gun shop comes in, so.
That was training, right? They did,
They did sales, they did manufacturing, and they did some security stuff too, and training stuff.
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
So how many square feet are you gonna occupy?
It's roughly
So for like,
shy of 1,000.
yeah, shy of 1,000,
Yeah.
say 800 plus or minus.
Oh.
Mike, through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
So this is just in front of us for us to see if we, to waive site plan review.
We've sent review and place any conditions you
Right.
might feel would be necessary for the use.
And in my mind, most of the site plan review is just traffic and parking. And seeing that they're gonna operate 5 to 8, maybe even earlier. I mean, I drive by there, I don't think there's any traffic jams that have been happening. Unfortunately, Steve, I wish it was
Yeah, right.
bustling.
I wish it was
Bustling.
like more traffic, right?
There's more traffic, but
Better than my current spot.
all right, but I see no reason that
Yeah.
we should make the applicant go through a site plan review and literally, at a minimum, $3,000 for an engineer to tell us what parking spots, and we have a Dave LaValle plan here. 1997, which probably hasn't changed too much.
Okay.
Well,
Bill. Yeah, I mean, I would just add, I know in your letter you talked about you'll be reinforcing the security for
Mhm.
that site. And again, I'm assuming you've done it in another built place, so
Yep.
you know what you need to do for windows, doors to make, obviously.
I've been in
that's-
business since 2021, so
Okay,
I know the mass laws as they change like every couple of years. But yeah, we will be reinforcing security.
okay. So I think maybe we'll just go around if, Bob, you have any thoughts or comments at this time?
No, I want to support any business. I want to support any business moving to Sutton. Obviously, you have all the permits, they keep track of you.
Yep.
They might have missed you out in Manchog, but they know where you are now. So, you're in a good location, I
Oh,
think.
I'm actually in Whitensville.
Whitesville, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so another guy who was in the spot, he's in Manchog.
Founding
Yeah,
fathers moved down to the mill.
Yeah, no, and that's beautiful. I support that stuff too, but it's just try to get people in seats doing business is what all businesses need, so I'm on board.
Yeah, this seems reasonable to me. No for no hearing.
Anything else, Bill? Oh, yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I just want to say that this business is hard. I'm a gun guy, and these guys have just been conspired against from every level of government, especially from the state level. God bless you, what goes on. So at least you have one place where we're not trying to put you out of business.
Anything at this point?
As long as everything's safe and above boards.
Good.
So, just one little quick question. I thought you were replacing the space where Founders was, but it's not the
Slightly
exact.
different location.
Originally, that was the intent, but another.
Well, it's
yeah.
a couple doors down.
Okay.
Because what's happening is that there's a door there that goes into where the autism kids are, and we might be, she needs more space, we might be expanding it for her.
Okay,
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
And then Ron had some bars and stuff on there, we're gonna take them off and put them on
Yep.
the other
yeah,
door.
good. No, I think like the rest of the board has said, we're always welcoming new businesses to come in. Some businesses move to different locations and, and again, I think a lot of times we do a site plan if they're really changing the space within the building and all of the side, and it's obviously very similar to what was there, so, if nothing else, I think you can see if we have a motion by somebody.
I make a motion that we, what do I have to do? Not have a hearing?
Waive site
Base
plan.
site plan review.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we, gotcha, right there. Make a motion to waive the site approval and allow a change of business from Founding grandfathers to Pioneer Arms Gun Shop at 176 Worcester Public Turnpike with the following conditions, and that we don't need to have a site plan.
The standard, I would recommend standard condition number 1, which is approval of all required local, state, and federal permitting authorities. So up to you to make sure you don't need any other permits.
The permits can be, this was the first part of the process. I need basically a letter from the town saying I can be in this, location. I give that to the ATF, apply for that license, then the state, and business licenses and all that. So this was the first step.
Great. So I think that's the only condition you need unless you would like to place some more.
I second that motion.
Any other discussion, guys? No?
Call for a vote.
Call for vote.
Bob
Bob?
Largis, aye.
Golf ball, aye.
Mike Gagan, aye.
Bill Talcott, aye.
Wesley Stanhope, aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Good luck, wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I'll put that in letter form to you tomorrow, and I'll make sure it is CC'd to the building commissioner and the police department. Okay? You bet.
Okay.
Hey, Steve.
Good luck, thank you. The next action item tonight is 32 Boston Road, a new business vital eds training.
So I talked to you about this business last week. You guys asked for a new plan. They are getting you that new detailed plan. It's not quite ready yet, so that will be placed on a future meeting as soon as the plan is ready.
So, and what's this plan that's in our bind?
Oh, that's the one he gave to the zoning board.
I mean, this is what we're looking for.
What one are you talking about?
This is 188.
Yeah, that's not this one.
Never mind, sorry.
Hold, please.
That's why I had trouble lining it up when I was looking at it.
On one, Bill.
On me.
So again, 32 Boston Road will be continued to another meeting.
Yes,
Okay, to be determined.
yes.
Okay? The next action item tonight is 188 Worcester Providence Turnpike, and it's additional staff parking.
All right, so I actually told the owner, after we got the review by Graves, which I've given you a copy of, just the initial email, it became clear after Graves's review that a groundwater protection district special permit was going to be required. While I was reviewing the map, which I think I also had Tammy give you a copy of, which lays in all the overlay districts, this one, it became apparent that not only there's the Zone 2 for the Cold Spring Brooks, there's 2 interim wellhead protection districts for wells in the area, and this is a floodplain district. So they're gonna need floodplain overlay special permit too. So there was no point in them attending this evening, really, because they need to, even though adding parking for employees only is certainly a site plan issue, the fact that they're now gonna be impacting ground that is within the floodplain partially, and that is within 3 interim wellhead protection or 2 interims and 1 Zone 2, there's no getting around that. So they're gonna have to go through the special permit process. I did provide them all the forms. I gave them the latest copy of the bylaw to kind of dig into that bylaw. And what looked like it was gonna be a pretty easy fix for some necessary staff parking there is gonna be more complicated.
Okay.
So,
We had at one time approved an extension on this building, I think, further to the south.
actually, it was the one right next door, the one on 3. What, he wanted a garage extension on this one. This is his son, so this is his lot, the Fitzpatrick's, and this is his son. We approved one here, which they never went ahead with because there were issues that came up with the flood
But
zone.
isn't there a building that's been put on the back of this thing to date? No?
No, on number 3, there might be.
I think there is on the back.
There could be. We did approve one, but I thought there were complications with the flood zone, so maybe the addition, you know what it was? We did the addition on the back, and then they were gonna do changes here that they couldn't proceed with because of the floodplain. So this addition did go on here. I don't know why it's not showing in this block, but what was gonna go on here did not go on. So this is the existing shape. This hasn't changed. They actually have a septic system back here now, so they're just gonna be replacing it and scooting it over. So it is previously disturbed ground, so the septic system can stay as long as they don't increase the capacity. So that's not a problem with the groundwater protection district. The bigger problem is that then you're gonna pave in the groundwater protection district and you're gonna create runoff. And within the groundwater protection district, it's a different level of treatment. And when you pave and create impervious in the floodplain, as your floodplain administrator, you need to offset that impervious area because you're decreasing the flood capacity. So that's why they have to go through the public hearing. So it appeared like a pretty simple change, an easy use waiver, but because it's sitting where it's sitting, it just got more complicated. So they have all of that. They're getting all their ducks in a row, and then they'll be filing for this dual hearing before the planning board.
So will we entertain the motion tonight, though, to require it? That would be at the next point.
No, I mean, you can require a site plan if you want.
But we're not even at that.
It's
Okay.
superfluous if you want.
Okay.
So where was the parking supposed to go anyway?
Right behind the building,
Behind the building?
right behind the building, on top of where their septic is.
Which I think now has an addition on it, so.
Yeah, I mean, you can see in this is the accurate site plan that was provided to you.
Okay.
So,
And that was the next one down. I think it was Mr. Murphy, they spent a lot of time.
Yes,
going back,
exactly.
And then they stopped.
they did. So they'll be coming back. If you, actually, you probably should tell me, if you think site plan review is also required, they're already having a public hearing. They're already notifying abutters within 300 feet, so if you want to do the site plan review, we'll do it. If you don't, they're still going to have to get the other two permits, and then you waive site plan review. It's up to you.
But if we don't do it, where will the public hearing be held? Within us, or?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, because you are the floodplain board,
Okay.
and you are also the groundwater protection district board. So they're going to be in front of you for a hearing anyways, so if you want to just throw site plan in there, it'll cost them $200 more, but it won't elongate their process at all. They already, as you can see, they have the plan already for site plan, so up to you. Or you can waive the site plan approval prior to the process, but you're still going to have a public hearing for these two uses.
because the site plan really is adding a few parking spots.
Right,
not-
which normally-
Nothing within the building. and-
No,
I mean,
nor, they're not changing a use.
Right.
Again, if it was a different location, this is not normally something we would require a public hearing for. It's just not.
Right.
It's employee parking. It's actually going to improve operations on the front of the building. So,
So, yeah, I mean, we can kind of go around the board. I mean, my initial thought would be not need to add on an extra piece if they're already going to be going through other steps to meet. But you can check on the board if everyone has any quick comments or anything.
We have to always plan ahead, and I am planning ahead. But clearly, a site plan isn't required for me. There's wetlands, businesses on 146 are, there's less and less available because we have so much there. So everyone knows there's wetlands there. They're gonna have to deal with it. For me, the $200 will be spent on a lot more than $200,000 to make this thing happen. So I want to support a business opportunity as opposed to chasing people out of here.
Yeah, I would not think we'd want to have a hearing on parking expansion.
Bill, any?
Same.
James? Wes, any?
Yeah, my questions on it was, I talked to Jen about this before, was where they had the original septic tank and percolation area, and they were gonna be moving that, so as long as that's gonna be reviewed elsewhere, and the retaining walls right on the boundary, so as long as that's gonna be reviewed elsewhere as well, that's where my questions were, is on the environmental side of it, which is not necessarily the parking spaces. So,
Okay, so I guess then at this point, we could take a motion again to waive the site plan review for this project, but knowing it will be
I'll make that motion.
continued for future.
You want a motion, or?
But that it will require a floodplain and a groundwater protection public hearing process.
Yeah, I'm not giving them a pass. They just-
No,
I'll save them a couple $100.
Just site plan
Maybe spend
review.
Other places, if it's possible to do this.
For the parking,
Right.
motion for the parking. I'll second that.
But there will, again, as you said, be a floodplain review and what's the
right.
other?
And to Wes's point, you can see on one of these plans, there's a wall shown. Just because you're not having a public hearing under site plan review doesn't mean you're giving away any ability to review where the parking is,
Right.
where accessory things like the retaining walls are, and making sure that all of that complies with the bylaws, during that other process.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, I think.
I didn't realize they're having parking issues there.
Just, yeah, it's a little tight,
It
yeah.
is tight.
It's a little tight,
Tight
so
site.
they just want employee parking behind the building.
Okay. At this point, if nothing else, we'll take a vote on this. Bob?
Aye.
Scott Pwell, aye.
Mike Egan, aye.
Bill Talcott, aye.
Wesley Stanhope, aye.
Motion passes 5-0 to waive the site plan, knowing that there's a few other hurdles to pass, and that will be a public meeting on those. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Moving on to 100 Worcester Providence Turnpike, an as-built plan approval.
All right, I'm just going to double check. There may or may not be a representative on Zoom for this one. Is there a rep for 100 Worcester Providence on Zoom? If so, just unmute and say, hey. I don't see Travis, who is, no? All right. So, you have in your packet the statement required by the conditions of approval, basically stamped by the civil engineer, James Bernardino, saying the site has been constructed substantially in accordance with the approved plan. He's noted the minor deviations, which included reducing the size of the fire protection storage tank, the AC pads where those were placed, and the head wall was removed and replaced with a manhole in the drop inlet. Those are the only changes. Graves Engineering, you have their review. Their minor changes noted in their review were made to the plan, and Graves acknowledged that via email. And Graves conducted a site visit last week to the site and they even checked the landscaping for me because I was in another meeting. So, it's a really clean site. It's good to go. If you haven't been out there, make sure you take a drive through. They've done a really good job up there. So, they have now complied with the as-built and the engineer's statement of certification as required by your approval.
I don't visit sites, but I just happen to drive in there. We are so lucky. Unbelievable what they did with that drive-up. The whole thing, I just drove in and said, that's crazy, how much work.
A lot of
they
work, a
spent.
lot of silver work.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's safe getting out, and who else was gonna come to the drive-in? I think it's just, it's wonderful. I think it was a home run.
I'm trying to remember who went on the site visit with me. Did you? You did. So you and I and Wally went on the initial site visit, so you can talk on what it looked like in the beginning
What was
compared to
there,
what it
what
looks
they
like
did.
now. It's,
Amazing.
And Travis was, yeah. Amazing, you know what, and the architecturals, I know I don't know if we bullied them to put in the way it was. I think really nice. It was they went to town too, that didn't take too long.
no, not for the kind of work that was, you were basically cutting off part of the site and dumping it down here so it would level off, and then.
I
was
was
beautiful.
amazed. I was amazed.
A nice
did a
looking
great
building.
job.
Yeah. Home run.
Yeah, I've just seen it going by, but again, it's always working, the vegetation, they seem to keep addressing it on the hill. You know, yeah, it looks really sharp from there, I'm gonna go up and take a
Somebody was saying,
ride
oh, what's
around.
all that long stuff on the hill? It's kind of scrubby. That would be called native planting on that hillside, so you should see more of that. That's a good thing.
No. Unbelievable.
Just as a refresher, this has a septic system or is no septic on
No,
this
it
site?
has a septic system.
And it has a cistern, which is the fire water tank.
The tank, yep.
That's in the back, right?
It's in the back. I'm trying to
that
find the septic system on here, and I'm not.
When I did the drive-by, I don't remember the cistern, but I see it on here.
Oh, the cistern
Cistern.
is tucked way in the back.
Yep.
It drops down when you
But you
come off the back
you
of
would
the.
see it. It's above grade.
Yeah, but you wouldn't see it from the road, from
No.
146, because you go out the back of the parking lot, and then it drops down. You probably drop down at least 6 feet. You should, you see it off the back of the parking lot, but it's integrated really well.
Amazing.
The septic is shown to the front on 146 site.
Yep.
Right. It's small, it's under the parking lot for the actual septic tank, pump chamber,
See the existing,
existing soil absorption system.
Oh, okay. All right, I see that.
Great.
so yeah, a little bit of a transformation on that site.
Yeah, and Wes, just for you, like you said, this is one that they came in front of us. We talked about what we liked, what we didn't, you know, the colors, some of the, 'cause
Colors.
within a degree, you know, within a level of, you know, wanting to look nice and fit in with Sutton. Setback with plenty of parking and, you know, it's just, and not a lot of traffic.
Yep.
Was a big thing, right? It was literally,
Yeah, the state, because they had to give the access permit onto 146, said to us quite a while ago, don't send anything that has significant traffic impact. And this one was estimated about 5
5
tractor trailer
tractor
trips.
trailers that need to be repaired.
Yep.
They get dropped off, get repaired, picked up and go, and
That's it.
within a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks,
Yeah.
I mean, so.
And it's in the 146 overlay district, which is also called by certain engineers our pretty bylaw, which requires some landscaping and architectural considerations. And they came kind of right in line. It's an industrial building, but it's a darn good-looking industrial building, and they did some brick or some stone facing on the office section, and it's nice and clean.
Yep.
And a good job on the landscaping, too. Spared no expense on all the trees on
Right.
that site.
There are no more parcels of that size on 146.
There's a
that I
few,
know.
but they're, sloped like this.
Yeah,
Oh.
no, I just, I was amazed when I was walking around there. So, well done. So we got
So,
lucky.
all you
We'll take
need
the
on that
credit.
one is the motion to approve the as-built. I didn't put the date, so the date, most recent date is 7/2/25.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And again, to approve the asphalt,
To
The
approve
as-built
the
plan.
as-built plan
As-built.
and accept the certification.
as of the 7/2/25, the last one you have, you said? Okay.
Call for a vote.
All right, Bob?
Bob Rogers, aye.
Top call, aye.
Mike Egan, aye.
Bill Talcott, aye.
Wesley Stanhope, aye.
Okay. Motion passes 5-0-0. So hopefully they'll be, do you, any idea when they'll be opening?
No, I can ask.
Hopefully
I'll
soon.
find
I
out
mean, it
for you.
looks- Definitely look forward to taking a ride up there and kind of driving around it too. I've been meaning to, but others I'm passing it and looking up at it, so. Okay, great. The next one is the HPP update presentation and potential action.
All right, I'll give you a brief intro, and then it's all Wes. All right, so, you all have this wonderful draft. This is available on the planning board's website. It is also available on the HPP working group website. As you will recall, you appointed a whole bunch of people to the Housing Production Plan Working Group at the end of last year. And that group has worked diligently for 6 months to update the 2019 housing production plan and to provide you with this 2025 update of that plan, including their recommendations. This plan is important because it is one of 2 things that are required to safeguard the town against inappropriate or unfitting and undesirable 40B comprehensive permit projects, should the town wish to do that. You must have a current certified by the state HPP, and you must be actually producing affordable housing at a rate of 0.5 to 1% per year. If you want to be able to, the zoning board would potentially get an inappropriate project in front of them. They would potentially deny that, and denials automatically go to the State Housing Appeals Committee. If you are in what is called safe harbor, that is having the plan and producing units, you are protected for 1 to 2 years, depending on whether you're producing 0.5% or 1%. So this is part 1 of a safe harbor process, but it's also an action plan to actually meet our 40B goals. So, and I am not going to steal Wes's thunder, because he's going to tell you where we stand on all of that. In your package, you also received these 3 fact sheets, which were produced as part of this process. One is on affordable housing creation, one is on MBTA law, and one is on the Community Preservation Act. And you'll recall the lawsuits relative to MBTA law and an unfunded mandate. This just came out recently, so this is the fact sheet on how that was settled in the courts. And then I try to make sure you get these, but this is the latest income limits for affordable housing. These are the income you're limited to qualify. These are the 2025 income limitations for affordable housing. So these are all just background documents that relate to the amazing presentation you're going to hear Wes give you now.
Just before Wes begins, I just wanted for the record, for those that may not be aware, I was on the committee as a representative from the planning group. Wes was voted in by the group to be chairperson, and since then, he has been elected to the planning board, so he's here to the dual role tonight, but
Yep,
it's, a lot of work put in by the whole committee. Is quite an
absolutely.
experience of 15 random people coming together and, working through ideas and different opinions and
Yeah.
coming up, which he'll soon explain, a very,
Yeah, the back and forth of the process.
back and forth, yeah.
Does the current 40B project that's going on, is that quantified to the 0.5% or?
So, it could. So it depends on when this plan is certified by the state. So if the comp permit is acted on after this is certified by the state, then those units would count towards the 1%, but it's over a year. So there's not enough. There's only 16 units total in that project, so you get 4 out of it. So you need to get another 30-something, which to get to 1%, you need another 13 within a year from then to get to 0.5%. So even if that's approved after the fact, I'm not aware of another project queuing super quickly that would get us the rest of those units. We do have Wedgewood going to pre-construction, and 12% of that development is affordable. So we could potentially bring on some more units with that, but those will kick in as local initiative units when they pull the building permits for them. So those will come on a little bit slower. So I doubt we will be achieving the 0.5% a year from now, but hopefully the plan will result in some firm actions that can move us in the direction of our 10% sooner than later. So,
And how long do you think it takes the state, if we adopt this tonight, and then it's submitted to the state, how long does it take for them to make a review and approval?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember how much it took last time. I feel like it was less than 3 months.
And they don't make edits, they just say it's good
Well,
or bad.
No, they can, and they have, to various towns said, look, we think your plan is missing this item and that item. We had the benefit of Central Mass Regional Planning helping us with some aspects of the plan. So when they reviewed the draft, they made 1 or 2 suggestions that we adjusted to try to make sure our plan addressed things that had been coming up in the latest reviews. So, we're trying to put our best foot forward and
Yeah.
get through it clean.
And does that suggest there'll be things at the town meeting in the fall for action or no action?
Let's talk about that after Wes's
let him give it-
presentation.
Okay,
This will answer a lot of your thoughts and questions.
you'll answer all my questions then.
Not all, but-
Very good.
Never get into.
No pressure.
To try.
As an aside, Mr. Chairman, we do have another member of the HPP in the crowd. That's Pastor Don McKinnon is here.
Come on up.
Yeah, so we have Don here in the crowd, and he is joined in on all of our presentations we had at the forums, which is great. And I see as well, we have Christine and Andre, I think, out in Zoom.
And Don, if you do want to at any point make any comments, or,
Feel free.
please come up to the chair and just let us know, and you're more than welcome. If Wes gives you the okay, we'll see how it's going.
You don't need your buy or leave.
So just to start with the mission for the housing production plan, our mission was for Sutton to sustain its rural character, but, ruh-roh, George,
Well, that's one way to do it.
and we're back. Okay. So we're looking at recommendations that would have the least impact on the rural character of Sutton, but also to provide an avenue for people to remain and live in Sutton through different ways of affordable housing. So that kind of wraps up, the high levels of what our goals were, our mission and goals for the housing production plan working group that we had. So the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40B comprehensive permits. So every community within the state is supposed to maintain at least 10% deed-restricted subsidized housing inventory, SHI, which is the affordable housing within the town. Affordable units can be for sale or rented, and that's going to be key. We'll get into the difference between this for sale and rented because that could help us out on the rented side. There is a penalty for non-compliance, which we felt here in the town, and that's where a developer could come in and construct any type of development overriding our zoning laws. Developer must still comply with the Title V, Wetlands Protection Act, building codes, safety regulations, but they could override our own zoning. Safe harbor. Sorry, some of these are a little bit backwards. So if we get to safe harbor, that's the term that we hear about. That's if we actually have this plan in with the state and it's approved, and we could actually maintain 0.5% production per year of affordable housing, or 1% over 2 years, which basically the math works out the same. Or when we do achieve the 10% overall affordable housing in the town, we are in safe harbor. That means we could deny the 40B permits in town if they do not fit in with the town's goals. So that's where we could prevent any of the actual 40B housings that, developments that do not fit with the goals of our own town. That's where the state's Housing Appeals Committee, HAC, will find that the zoning board's denial consistent with local priorities if the town is in safe harbor. We are not in safe harbor. First of all, we don't have this plan approved by the state, and then we are not producing enough affordable housing. Where we are with our housing.
Well, this is a question, I think,
Yep.
what is that number, 0.5% a year? What is that?
He's going to show you.
It's,
Ready?
Gonna come to that?
It's coming up
it's
next.
coming up.
Okay, I'm
Yep.
gonna find it in the.
Sure. This is where I break it down, we broke it down kind of easy steps, and it's based off the 2020 census. They will update it on the 2030 census. Every 10 years, they're gonna update these numbers. But remember, we don't stop building houses every 10 years. We keep on building houses, which means when you see these numbers, we need to be planning ahead. Even though the law is based at 2020 and set in stone until 2030, we're gonna be behind if we just look at the 20.
Changing target.
Yep.
Exactly. So based on the 2020 census, 3,542 units were in town. That means our SHI, the affordable housing units that we should have, is 354 units. Total number of currently is 55 units within town, That's-
Actually, 1.55%.
1.55%.
That's it.
That we have a shortfall of 299 units to meet the 10% target. So that 0.5% per year is producing 18 affordable housing units. It rounds up to the nearest. 18 units per year we produce. Once we have this plan on file, we will be in safe harbor.
It's those two things together.
Those two things. That plan, without that plan, we could still produce 18 units, but an actual developer could come in and override our zoning. We need to have that plan and then be producing those units. So what is affordable as of 2025? The area median income is $122,200. Housing that could be afforded by households earning up to 80% of the area median income. Afforded means spending 30% or less of your income on household expenses such as rent and utilities or mortgages, taxes, and utilities. And there's asset limits. So non-age restricted developments of $75,000 or age restricted development is higher, $275,000. And we made it very simple with, one person, two person, like stick figures, just for it to represent family sizes. So you can see what a one person, two person, up to a 4-person households, what the ranges are for income for the affordable housing units. What the process was for updating this actual housing production plan. Typically, we had bi-weekly meetings. Sometimes we had weekly meetings as well during, key components of this. Subcommittees broke out. We had 15 of us, so we've actually broke up into 4 or 5 different groups at times, focus on different items to update, and we had each had different focuses to work on. We had a town-wide survey that went out to all households. We ended up 4. One of them was an initial one, but we had 3 public
Practice.
forums. 2 of them were at the senior center, 1 down at Blackston, and 1 here in this room. We're in for a review now at the planning board, and then at the select board tomorrow. And after that, hopefully it's a submission to the state for their approval. Once we have that, this housing production plan hopefully be filed on state for 5 years.
Did everybody stay engaged for the whole period of time?
For the
on
most part.
committee?
For the
Pretty much.
most part.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big group,
It's a
but
big group.
everybody was pretty much engaged. As you can see, we still have people who are logged in online right now. And then I hear people who actually watch things even afterwards from even planning board meetings and other meetings that dovetailed into what we're doing. And everybody has their own talents and what they do and bring it back to the group, which is good. Like I said, it was like a democracy in action because everybody has their own diverse talents that they brought to the table. So, one of the things we reviewed, which was not in the previous one because this law was not out, was the MBTA. This is going to be key for the town because we need to have action on it this year. So Chapter 48, Section 3A, multifamily zoning came out in 2021. Sutton is part of this law. We're located here. The arrow's not directing the center of it, but it's it's getting to Sutton. Because we are adjacent to Grafton, that puts us into the MBTA category. So there's 177 communities with or close to the transit system that goes to Boston. we need to produce, or have an, no, not need to produce, sorry, but we need to actually have an actual area that could have 15 units per acre multifamily. So what's the purpose of MBTA community? It's intended to create more multifamily housing. So it's different to the 40B law that was looking at, that's been around since, 1969, I believe? Well, 40B is looking at trying to produce affordable housing. MBTA's sole purpose is to produce multifamily housing. It actually restricts the amount of affordable housing. A maximum of 10% is to encourage developers to make more profit out of it. There's no production mandate or requirement to build new units. The law only requires multifamily by right of zoning. Actual production will depend on factors such as a developer's interests, location, infrastructure. But as we know, if it's zoned in areas of green fields, has all the services available, and it's in a good location, it would be built. So what do we need to do? Establish an overlay district and enact a bylaw where multifamily homes are allowed by right with an effective density of at least 15 units per acre. And for Sutton, we need to have 101 multifamily units. Then adjust and enact a model bylaw that meets the state law, but with the uniqueness of Sutton in mind. So after a lot of review, we looked at a lot of different parcels, and over at Galaxy, 10 and 17 Galaxy Pass with 15 Pleasant Valley, to overlay, integrate with existing commercial developments. So it's in a location where it's close to actual transit. If it was to be built, it would be in a walkable community next to businesses, but it's in a place where it is already has, existing existing buildings there.
You're
Great.
pointing to things that are existing
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the empty
Correct,
land?
yes.
Yes, there's a reason for that Wes will get into.
Okay.
But this recommendation, again, MBTA, the HPP committee only had to deal with meeting the requirements of 40B. Like the last housing production plan, they looked at housing needs more broadly across the community. And because MBTA compliance is required by year end, they took that on as one of the areas that they researched, they studied, they looked at what other towns had done, and they thought about competing goals, having to meet MBTA compliance, but actually needing to meet 40B and wanting to produce affordable units. And Wes used a phrase in several meetings that I thought was just an excellent phrase, and you're going to see it play out as he goes through this presentation. But part of the thought process is we don't have a ton of land that's appropriate for 40B and or multifamily housing. How do we want to spend our land? Awesome phrase he used. And you're going to see that play out as he goes through the presentation. So because this form of housing produces a max of 10% housing, and affordable housing, we really want to focus on that production. We picked an area that's appropriately suited, but that doesn't use up a lot of really great potential 40B land, but it meets all the state requirements. It may or may not produce actual MBTA housing depending on what Galaxy Development chooses to do. They could technically put housing over Starbucks. They could technically knock down a building and put something else up. But the reality is, at the current time, that's not likely. Maybe down the line, this produces some MBTA housing. But right now, it meets the state's guidelines with little impact to the town.
So then into the actual rest of the recommendations, which deal more on the affordable housing aspect. So continue community outreach like we've been having. We've had the different forums with the community. I wouldn't necessarily say as often if we had them over the past few months, but that we shouldn't necessarily stop for 5 years until the next time this needs to be updated. So whether it's an annual check-in with the community to check the heartbeat, the pulse, to see how things are going, but there should be a, kind of like a regular check-in. And also to have, obtain a regional affordable housing coordinator. You know, we're not a large town, to have maybe a dedicated coordinator, but I'm sure the other towns adjacent to us are in a similar situation where they can't either, but maybe there's a ability to have a part-time affordable housing coordinator that could work between us and other towns. Because it is a lot of work. The 15 of us working on this for the past 6 months, it's a good amount of work to do. And somebody should pick it up and keep it up on a regular basis. The Community Preservation Act and Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund. These are two things that could be brought in. They don't necessarily need to be tied together, but there are two different ways. One is a funding mechanism that could be tied to property, and one is a mechanism to actually hold money that could be used for affordable housing. So the Community Preservation Act, it could be used for affordable housing, historic preservation and open space. And then how it would work is that Sutton residents contribute money into a CPA fund through a tax surcharge between 1% to 3%. And the state makes a calculated match contribution more to 3% community. So if we get up towards a higher amount of that, we get more money in from the state. Think of it kind of like an IRA or 401k from an employer. The employer this way would be the state giving money in towards the town. And then that money could go towards our affordable housing, historic preservation, or open space. Appointed CPA committee proposes and/or reviews proposals for voters to act on. So we can't just open the purse and use it for, one person can't just do it. It needs to be an actual committee to designate where the money goes to. And then the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, it's funded through a CPA or other means. So we can have payments from developers in lieu of affordable housing units that could go into Affordable Housing Trust Fund that we could use to purchase our own land or our own buildings or use for other mechanisms for affordable housing.
I just want to stress that point, that second to last point. So the law requires you to establish a CPA committee. Members are appointed to that. Different affordable housing, historic preservation, open space rec groups are around the town bring proposals to the CPA to think about and consider, and the CPA can come up with their own, but it's ultimately the voters. Only the voters can approve expenditure from these funds. So it's not a free-for-all. You don't just get the money and the CPA says, let's do this week. Voters ultimately approve expenditure of those funds. Okay?
So this surcharge is 1% of the
Your tax bill.
tax bill,
Yes, so,
not the taxed value of the home.
Not the
right,
assessed
so
value
if
of it.
you
Not the assessment,
take a look
it's-
at the CPA fact sheet, it gives you example on the back to make it easy for you to look at. So like, for example, a property assessed at $300,000, a 1% to 3% surcharge on the tax for that would be an increase of $24.04 to $72.12. So if your house is worth $700,000, that surcharge right now at today's tax rate would be $72.12 to $216.36. So, so this fact sheet, which you've been given, which anybody can get online and/or from the planning department, shows you what the CPA means for you and your home value and taxes.
The inclusionary zoning. So this is where, whenever there's houses built in town right now, and multiple houses, we have to go back and add more affordable housing into our stock. This is where we said 2020, our census is, the amount of housing is based on the 2020 census, but we keep on building. If we don't add affordable housing to the units that we're building today, or over the past couple of years, and the next 5 years, we're going backwards, we're pulling money out of our savings account. So basically, about a ratio of every 10 market rate homes we build, we're in the hole for one of those being an affordable house that hasn't been built yet. So the recommendation would be is that when there's 4 or plus units being built in a development, that 15% of those be affordable units. And a developer can provide a cash payment to Sutton's Affordable Housing Trust Fund that would need to be set up in lieu of the 15% affordable housing requirement. And that would be at a calculation that would be established. So it wouldn't be a fixed fee, it would be depending on the market value of that development.
So you'll recall, last fall's town meeting, we did bring an inclusionary zoning bylaw forward. It did not have the in lieu of provision. So if, it did have 15%, it was either 4 or 5 units, I can't remember which. You would, again, make sure you adjust that old bylaw or craft a new bylaw. Town meeting would have to approve it, and then any form of housing that's built in Sutton would potentially, you can choose in your inclusionary zoning bylaw, but basically the group recommendation is any one that's 4 or more units would require 15% affordable. So for instance, you approved Compass Rock on Purgatory Road, it was 30 or 31 units. If this provision was in place, 20% or 15% of those would have had to have been affordable. So instead, we are 3 units behind instead of being 5 units ahead. So, or 2 units ahead, keeping up and then gaining 2. So this is a catch-up, and I don't, Wes didn't pause on it on the opening slide of this section, but there is no silver bullet. There's not one of the things he's discussing here that will solve the whole problem. So it's really just a combination. Which combination are we likely to enact that will get us toward our goal? So this is one goal, which is kind of that catch-up and keep treading water so you don't fall behind provision.
The key thing is not to put more than one on a meeting. That's what we were talking about.
Right, because people get confused on a town meeting is what he's talking about. If you put a bunch on a town meeting, if they're similar anyways, people can get confused. So keep going and we'll go to the,
So chapter 40R, this is getting back towards like that galaxy area where you had an example here where you showed the area that was not. So 40R, this is where your smart growth zoning. Here is where we could actually zone an overlay area for a mixed use. Picture having like restaurants, pubs, shops on ground floor, and then residential above it for the next few floors, 2 floors, 3 floors above. What's key about this is if we do an actual smart zone, 40, which is 40R, 40S smart zoning, we could actually get financial incentives from the state. So when we actually do a smart zone and you do an overlay, you get $10,000 to $600,000 in state funding, depending on the actual building that gets designed, permitted there, plus an additional $3,000 for every new home that's created. So this, depending on the size of the actual apartment building, that apartments that are amount of apartments that's in the building. On top of that, if it's 40S, there is an actual catch-up payment for the educational system. So for the kids that are in that residential apartment, if there is a shortfall for the school district, the state will pay the delta between what their taxes we take in from that apartment to what it costs to go to the actual school funding to make whole of the school system. And that's what's key about this actual type of a zoning. If we do a zone overlay for an area that made sense to have commercial at ground floor, residential at upper floors, and if we made this apartments as well, remember I talked about with the 40B law and where there's the difference between the for sale and apartments? If we had apartments and say 25% of them are affordable, if they're all rental, all of them count for the actual affordable housing units. So to keep it simple, if you had 100 units of residential, and they're all apartments, and 25 of them were deed restricted affordable, all 100 count to our affordable housing. So if we have, keep it simple, 100-unit building with apartments, ground floor is actual commercial, we did a 40R, 40S, we get funding from the state for the school, we get funding towards when we actually create the building for each residential unit, and we get funding when it's actually permitted
Does that school funding come in every year?
every year. And this is just a demonstration. This is going back when I started. Remember, we had Market 32 area highlighted for the MBTA, not, well, how do you want to spend your land? Well, there's that flat area, which is more suited for having commercial and residential. Well, maybe that's an area where we want to have a 40R, 40S, where there is commercial at ground floor, shops, restaurants, pubs. And then upstairs, those are shown, Jerry Townsend put that together from SketchUp. Those are 3-story buildings. Each one is like 30-something apartments in scale, 30-something apartments. So that's 100 units of apartments right there. Just show you in scale what that looks like.
Yeah, and that's just for scale purposes. Obviously, the town can't control that, the developer would, and it would have to, I think that's a Jim Metamara phrase, pencil out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so here's some,
These are some examples of what some 40R, 40Ss
Look
kind of could look like, from medium to larger. But we'd have to write the bylaw for what it would be.
right. So one of the considerations of the committee was, as you all know intimately from being on the planning board, there's not a lot of tax-based creation land left in the town of Sutton, especially not in the business highway district. So instead of making that vacant parcel at Market 32 MBTA, which is really just kind of housing mainly, you would make it something else. And 40R allows you to still capture the business money and the business uses that residents may want, while also doing housing that gets you towards your 40R goals and 40B goals, and also provides a different form of housing that we see in the surveys and in our discussions at forums and around town, people are looking for. So.
The cottage housing, so if we're looking at, locations where the smaller type of housing would work, is where Jerry has the top right is where there's the original form of cottage housing came from, was where you have like smaller single family and like 2-family units nestled together in the community. 900, 1,200 square feet. About 20% or so affordable housing units, mixed into the development. Looking at location, zoning density consideration, infrastructure. Key thing is preserve open space. What they're targeting for is 1- and 2-person households. Jen, do you want to talk more about?
Yeah, so as you know, again, from the bylaw we provided to town meeting, the key here is creating an alternative form of housing, again, that residents are looking for, that's missing in town. This is for 1- and 2-person households, really of any age group. And for those single young professionals or widowers or widows, or just people who just want to be single, or couples or 2-person households with no children, which if you watch the demographics, there's a lot more of that going on, who don't really want to own their own lot, who want to have more. This is kind of a condo situation where you would pay an HOA fee, and your common open space and your little parking areas would be taken care of for you. You're having first floor masters, maybe a loft upstairs in accordance with the bylaws written and approved by town meeting. So very specific, heavy on architecture, so you maintain that cottage feel that you see in these images. People will say, oh, this is a cottage. Cottages are very, very specific. And a small house is not a cottage. So this is meant to serve a very specific use in a very specific form. In general, not so much in today's market, but in general, these higher density situations and smaller footprints allow you to sell these for a little less than standard single-family homes. Today's market, there's so much desire for these and/or any housing that might not be the immediate effect. But the key here is to have zoning that doesn't cluster these kinds of developments altogether, that spreads them out, but that has a significant open space provision and buffering so that you could really nestle this in anywhere, again, if it's infrastructure compliant. So has water or sewer or has compliant Title V and wellhead compliance. So they don't have to be done on infrastructure. There's plenty that aren't, but you need to comply with Title V. So that will control ultimately off water and sewer, how many you can actually have on what acreage. So again, you'd be looking at taking the bylaw that was proposed, seeing if it works or it doesn't, overhauling it, adding or subtracting from it, and seeing what the community thinks.
Then the use of public property is kind of like as well, like how do you spend your land? So there's the town-owned land and state-owned land, because the state have actually come out with a law where they are looking at where you could actually use the actual state-owned land for developing of affordable housing. So what town-owned land potentially someday could be used for affordable housing creation? And this is where it'd be good to have a committee actually review town-owned land to see, is there potential, what would be the potential, what could be used someday in the future. The key with the actual town-owned land is that you basically RFP it to a developer, a portion of land, and you have control over what the design is. Here's an example of not a project I ever was involved with, but I do know, this is Ed Sopel allowed to use this picture, but he's from Delbrook JKS. They built that over in Carlisle, Mass. Carlisle wanted the actual building to look very rural, farming community. This one was Noah or Poa. It wasn't Poa. Pua or Noah built this. Noah, there you go. I get a few acronyms that are in my head from developers. Neighborhood of Affordable Housing. They built this, and when they do the RFP, they basically are donating the land to an affordable housing developer, and the affordable housing developer will then build what type of development the town wants. What is it got to have for an actual architectural design? What's the feel? What is the actual affordable housing requirement? And then if it's like a nonprofit or affordable housing developer, they are going to maintain that indefinitely. So it's not a developer is just going to, develop it and spin it off for high profit. They are going to maintain it indefinitely in the best interest for the town as well.
So the town gave him the land, and he built that, and now he maintains it and rents it.
Yep.
These are rental units.
These are rental units. But the town would say, here's a building that we want. We want this to have a mix of 80% for the affordable. We want it to be, whatever the percentage rates for the affordable housing, earnings. We want so many units inside here at these different rates. They want it to be indefinitely held by a developer. They can actually set what they want for that development. Projects I've been involved with where one client is out in Cape Cod, and it was a farm. They wanted the farm to be rehabilitated, so they ended up rehabilitating the stables. What came back to being horses were brought back on the farm, and you can see where it's like a 2-unit, duplexes were built, and 3-unit homes were built But you see all the picket fences are all nestled in and around, because that's what the town wanted. So that's what the benefit is, even if you purchase land, so like as an affordable housing fund, if you have the money, if we start the fund and get the money in, you can even purchase the right land if it came up to do it, even if it's not town land that we own now.
So that allows you to do the Chapter 60, 61A releases that we give recommendations on. If you have money sitting, in Affordable Housing Trust Fund, then you have funds where you could act on one of those releases and potentially bring appropriate land into the fold for affordable housing. So it's something to think about.
So they all interconnect into each other. There's not one recommendation that saves the day. That's where it's partnering with a good developer or nonprofit developer is key. And that's what we have.
All right.
Does the select board have a vote on adopting this, or is it only the planning
do.
board?
Yeah.
You do?
Yours is the primary, but they have a vote as well. So it'll go before the selectmen tomorrow night. But you are first. So, do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? For those of you who have had a chance to flip through the ginormous plan, do you think anything needs adjustment? Are you happy with what your working group produced on your behalf?
Well, I didn't get all the way through it, but I noticed that a large majority of it is factual and historical about where we've been and where we are.
Yep.
And that's all good background information. I think the recommendations, as you say, there's not just one, so there's a few different means and methods to address this and deal with it. And I think these are nicely summarized on page 7 and 8, actually. But this is a collaborative effort, putting this together, everybody, every subgroup had a part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the majority was spent on those recommendations of potential
Yeah.
developments. That's really where all of it,
Well, it's more than we've probably talked about, although we did have the cottage housing bylaw
And the inclusionary, yeah.
in front of the
Yep.
town. Well, we never got it in front of the town.
And the anticipation, and correct me if I'm off, is that the only bylaw going ahead this year would be for the MBTA piece.
Right, I mean, ultimately, the
Because
planning
that has to
board
be in
and
town.
other multi-member boards control what they put to town meeting, but it is the recommendation of the HPP group that only the MBTA bylaw go to fall town meeting, because people get confused really easily
Think so?
between 40A, 40B, 40R, 40S, and we have to have a MBTA bylaw in place by the end of the year. So that is the recommendation of this committee. Obviously, the planning board in the majority gets that, can say, no, let's throw it all at the wall. But the HPP, having worked at it for 6 months, really doesn't think that's a great idea.
So I think then that would, to me, that would be, if that's something we have to, maybe that comes into the, I don't know that I saw that type of recommendation to recommend one this year, but there it is, there's number one right here.
Yeah, MBTA would be the primary recommendation coming out of the plan, because it needs to be accomplished. It's got a deadline.
And that's primarily to identify specific parcels in this town?
So we have the parcels over at Galaxy identified. There was, during this process as well, a bylaw was actually written. And the overlay with the maps you saw up there with those 3 parcels was put together. Of course, it's just outlining the 3 parcels. That's not as hard as doing the bylaw, which I didn't write the bylaw myself, so. But
So we did write the bylaw, we formulated the map,
Yep.
and that was, we worked with Central Mass Regional Planning, and that was submitted to the state for pre-application review. So we want the state to look at it and get back to us on what they think, if it complies. So it did meet, the parcels met the compliance model. CMRPC ran the compliance model for the parcel configuration. And we did look at a lot of other bylaws and notes that were coming back from bylaws to make sure our bylaw kind of gelled with everything we were seeing. And they have 90 days. They've taken less in a few occasions. They've taken more on many occasions. But our goal was to try to get it into the state and have the state give us some feedback on it, so we know going into fall town meeting, if it's a bylaw, the state will ultimately
No
approve.
doubt. Just for clarification, because I saw you pointing to things that exist. And are you suggesting that we tear that down and build something new?
No.
No.
No, so, the state's compliance model is largely based on an area and an available density. So, we need to get 5%, I believe was the number, which is 181 units. We have to provide an area in town at a density of 15 units per acre, so the bylaw has to say you can build multifamily housing at least 15 units per acre, so our bylaw says that. And we have to be able to yield in whatever area we designate at least 181 units. So we ran a compliance model that amounts to about 12 acres of land, roughly. So, and what subcommittee members who were working on MBTA in particular found as they looked at other towns is you didn't need to do a blank parcel of land like the 40R parcel that, or the area that's open next to Market 32. You can actually designate an area that's partially developed, that's already developed with housing that qualifies. So if
Millbridge
you're
did that.
already doing it, you get a bonus because you've already done it. Or a gas station or whatever. You can designate an area already over development. That's allowed. So what the committee basically decided in the majority was, you know what? We don't have a problem producing multifamily housing. We don't have a problem producing affordable housing. If we're gonna designate land, we wanna spend our open, likely to be developed land on 40B, on affordable housing. Not so much MBTA, which has a cap on affordability. You can only get 10%. You're only treading water with that. You're never gaining anything. So because we saw that it was allowed in other communities, the majority of the committee decided, you know what? We're going to place it over existing uses as well. There's a little bit of a possibility they could build on top of Market 32 or Starbucks or on top of the dialysis clinic. They could knock it down if they wanted. The reality is those are fairly new structures. They probably wouldn't do that anytime soon, but it still complies with the law. So we're checking the box with little or no immediate impact to the town and
But you never know what'll happen, yeah.
you don't.
I got
But
it,
again,
yeah.
if it does happen, it's in an area with water, with sewer, with good
Right.
transportation
So,
and
good
next
stuff.
to services. So,
We didn't think the Bank of America would still be there, but it's still there.
yeah, so you never know what can happen,
Know what
but
can happen.
it checks the box with not a lot of impact and leaves land open for more beneficial development.
And if it satisfies that requirement, that's a good thing. That solves.
A lot of talk in this document too is that this is not a legal document we were creating. This was a working group committee putting together recommendations. The legal terms and the details would be in the bylaws, when
In
and
the
if
bylaws, yeah.
they ever went to the town to vote on
But this
it,
would
you know?
satisfy the state requirements just to have
Yes.
a plan on file.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
I just want to say, great job for the working committee to do all this. I was telling Wes, the time, everybody in this world, the one thing we all have in common is we all have the same amount of time in our lives. And for these people to give this up and do this, they deserve a pat on the back. And one of the recommendations, this came up in our last meeting, or meeting before that, I wasn't even aware of before, the Housing Trust Fund, but the ability to pay for deed restricted, on certain properties or any properties, if you had enough money in this trust fund, which would require, I guess, the CPA to be,
Well, I mean, CPA gives you a regular stream of funds. Whenever you collect CPA monies, a minimum of 10% have to be placed in each of those three buckets. So 10% housing, 10% in open space rec, 10% in historic preservation. The remaining 70% goes in a general bucket, and it can be spent anyway in any category. So, yeah, I mean, the CPA gives you a regular stock of funds. You certainly can get funds from in lieu of payments, from affordable housing requirements, or from donations or anywhere else. But the CPA is really where the money hits the, where the money really starts to gain if you look at communities who are doing well with affordable housing production. A lot of that is spurred by funds in the CPA. It just is.
And I think that piece about in lieu of some
Yeah.
developers saying, I can't do 15, I can do 10, but you then have to pay
Yeah.
a amount, and it goes into a fund that the town itself controls to directly create affordable housing or
Yep.
projects that fit higher, a higher rate. I mean, it's,
Exactly.
gives us the control on that, the town.
Um,
Go ahead, Bob.
And again, well done. One of my, I'm just wondering, we have a game plan. I think if we can reach out to developers, it's a new batch of developers that do this stuff. I'd be curious to hear what they think about our game plan, what's gonna make it happen, what's not gonna make it. I mean, it's like fishing. It's new bait. Are the fish gonna bite and actually do this, or is it just another idea that has no, if
Yeah.
you don't have wind in the sails, it's got a nice sail. But we need to, if we haven't reached out to some developers, if we're on track, are we crazy? Or maybe it's gonna be a different developer that comes to Sutton.
Yep.
Just a new batch of people. And at least we have a game plan, and I like the term, we have some wiggle room here. We don't want to be in a box.
Yeah, I mean,
and-
what's the term we use? Pam's here. Pam was on the committee as well. It was meant to be a menu of options for town residents and voters to choose from, to see how we get where we're going.
And I'd be curious to know I hope someone comes. If
And I think
they
one of the
don't-
things too, Bob, just is, as the committee get together, and it was 15 random people throughout the town for the most part, some people like some of the ideas better than the others.
Yeah.
But we vetted and we all, kind of agreed, well, you may not love this particular idea, but the majority thinks it should be in the plan. And it's a plan of building potential ideas. Not one that will
Okay.
answer it all, so.
So, if you're happy, if you don't have any suggestions for revisions or additions, the action that is required from the planning board and the Board of Selectmen is a motion to adopt the 2025 Housing Production Plan as updated by the Housing Production Plan Update Working Group. That was provided to the board in draft form and formally presented to you this evening.
I'm happy to make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, well, any other comments at this point? No? Okay, we'll take a vote to pass this motion.
Bob Lodges, aye.
Scott Paul, aye.
Mike Gagan, aye.
Bill Talcott, aye.
Wesley Stanhope, aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Yeah, very good.
Again,
Thank you.
Congratulate and
Good
good
job,
work,
everybody.
Good job,
certainly to
yeah.
Wes, who pulled this all together with 15 various people, so.
And it was
A
what,
big
six-
shout out
was
to
it
him.
6 months? It was about 6 months of time?
6 months.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for everybody who was part of the team.
okay, great.
All right.
Moving on to Forest Ed's update, if there is any. I see a slight
So, I
notation.
did have a phone meeting with town council and the building commissioner, and there is, I've responded to Mr. Moody in relation to his email you saw at the last one. I did consult with council, and council said, that the Permit Extension Act, because of the way we write our surety agreements, that works in the performance agreement dates and stuff, the Permit Extension Act would apply to those surety agreements, so those have been automatically extended for 2 years. So I did reply to Attorney Moody that town council, it is in agreement that the surety does not need extension. It is currently valid under this Extension Act until at least next fall, I believe. He had suggested back in May, at the very end of a long email, that, he is open to sitting down with the building commissioner, myself, his client, and town council if we want. I did reply to him that we're certainly open to meetings. I did have a meeting with the condo association, as you recall, a few weeks ago. So I did let them know that we're certainly open to having that meeting as well. But the building commissioner, who is the zoning enforcement officer, needs to be a part of all of those meetings, and it may be appropriate to have town council in the meetings as well. But I'll talk to the chairman a little bit more about that, and to the new town manager about that. So there'll be more to come at a future meeting, but we're doing stuff, put it that way.
Thank you. Anyone anything on that, or all set? Bob?
Thank you, Jen, and keep it on the agenda. I am anxious to
do.
get this off the agenda.
Yes.
So, we work for us, so you have to let them know, we're not going away. And it will never going to be, we have on our agenda, this is going to be the agenda because we want it
Yeah.
off the agenda.
Okey-dokey.
Please.
Thanks. Going to be moving on to administrative items. Approval of minutes from 6/16/25 meeting. Everyone had a chance to read them. Any comments on them? We can entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second, Bob
Second by
Rogers.
Bob. Great. Any other comments on the meeting notes? No? We'll take a vote on that. Bob?
Aye.
Scott Ball, aye.
Mike Egan, aye.
Bill Talcott, aye.
Wesley Stanhope, aye.
Motion passes 5-0-0 to approve those minutes. The only other things I see here, Jen, is a correspondence.
Yeah, you see I did send a letter to the owner of 140 Worcester Providence Turnpike, which is the business just to the right of Tony's Pizza on 146. That's a different autism business. And the neighborhood has reached out and on multiple occasions with concerns about clients and employees coming and going up and down Marble Road. And you'll recall when we did the last approval, when it was the hydroponics guy, so we've had several in between, but when we did the parking addition and the hydroponics guy moved in, one of the key things that was given in testimony at the meeting per the minutes in the tape was that the rear entrance was primarily for the use of the tenants who live upstairs, whose parking spaces are right there off the rear entrance, and for emergency access. That customers, clients, whoever's using the building, for the majority would be coming on and off of 146. That's not currently what's happening, so I did send a letter to the owner and CC'd it to the tenant saying, look, this was the terms of this approval when that additional parking went in, and for every subsequent tenant, you need to be aware of that. That impact, when we gave the use special permits, was that there would be minimal impact on the adjacent residential street, which is narrow and short and is not appropriately inundated with lots of clients in and out, up and down all day long. So just put them on notice. And then, as you know, articles, things that might impact you and/or the construction you see around, I like to copy those to you. So there was an interesting article in the Worcester Business Journal on the construction worker shortage. So I just provided you a copy of that because it's a little interesting. So that was it for correspondence.
Anyone else on the board, anything?
Jen, they're not going the wrong way on Marble Road, are they?
And
Is that what you're saying?
Marble Road is
It's one way.
two-way. No,
I
it's,
thought it was a one-way road.
no, it's two-way.
No?
Oh, it is two-way.
It's two-way. Yeah, but they're kind of speeding up Marble Road into the thing and speeding back out, back down to Boston Road. And it's just, when we approved the hydroponics store, when they added all of that parking on the side, you gave a use permit, and if you look at the permit, it was one of the, you know how you do the 5 criteria, and one of them was there will be little or no nuisance to the neighborhood because the only people who are supposed to be coming through the neighborhood is the tenants, the residential tenants, and emergency services. clients on and off 146. So,
Thank you, Jen.
okey dokey.
Nothing else? We'll entertain a
I'll make a
motion.
motion to adjourn at 8:30.
Second by anybody?
Second.
Second by Scott. All right, we'll take a vote. Bob?
Aye.
Scott Paul, aye.
Mike Gagan, aye.
Bill Talcott, aye.
Wesley Stanhope, aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0-0 to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.